Welcome everybody, and so glad you can share an hour with us for our Leader Spotlight for the month of May. I know a lot of people are always learning new virtual tools, and GoToWebinar is definitely one of those. So we are going to give a few people a couple extra minutes to crack into this GoToWebinar. So if you haven't grabbed a coffee or a tea or a quick bio break, feel free to do so. We'll get started in about a minute or two, but can't wait to introduce one of my favorite people that I've been able to work with for a few years, who we've been able to solve so many exciting problems around all things mentoring and networking. So can't wait to make the grand introduction momentarily.
Thanks, Dave. Looking forward to it. I like that you said I'm the favorite, but I'm not sure about solving all the world's problems, but looking forward to sharing.
We'll have to create a poll question at the end to really let the crowd decide. But yeah, welcome to everyone, and feel free to use the chat and question functionality as you're joining to say hello and introduce yourself, even where you're dialing in from. I know we have people dialing in from high growth technology companies. We have people from kind of Fortune 10 organizations, global heads of talent, to people from the business that are looking to bring more talent and learning programs. So feel free to introduce yourself on the chat, drop in your LinkedIn profile, and we'll get started momentarily. Okay. So I think with that, why don't we actually get started? And so first off, welcome to everyone to this webinar. If you get anything out of the next, call it 50 minutes, it's that we're hopefully going to introduce you to the world of informal, but through the lens of what we've seen as being one of the most innovative leaders in the informal space. I know, Pragashini, anytime I talk about how innovative you are, you're such a humble leader, but we work with over 180 organizations around the world to innovate mentoring and networking, not only from a diversity and inclusion lens, but also from a career development perspective. And Pragashini's been someone who's been a thought partner of my own and who has been innovating this across Thomson Reuters, but also across Ascend. And it is Global Pan-Asian Heritage Month, so it's a chance to celebrate organizations like Ascend, and Pragashini is a board member within Ascend Canada. So if you get anything out of the next 60 or 50 minutes or so, you're gonna get to learn a lot from an incredible leader. And I know in these more remote, decentralized times, we don't get to learn from each other as much, so you'll get that. We'll be able to dive into a variety of different topic areas, but we get to do this because at 10,000 Coffees, for those that aren't familiar with us, we are an informal talent development platform. We work with over 180 organizations around the world to help them deploy and measure the best informal experiences for their colleagues, whether that's mentoring, networking, whether it's groups or one-on-one, onboarding buddy programs, early career programs. Anything that doesn't happen in the classroom, we consider informal, and it's what 10,000 Coffees does. Of course, we built this organization over 5 years ago, before connectivity was as needed or as cool as we might say it is today. But we built it because we knew that the best learning, inclusion, culture moments happen through connection and happen informally. The reality, though, is that those moments typically are left to serendipity or to nepotism. And nepotism in that birds of a feather flock together. So connectivity happens with people that might look like each other when we actually need everybody to have access to connection, knowing that connection is core to contribution, culture, belonging, and so much more. And so we at 10,000 Coffees get to nerd out on this every single day to bring to organizations around the world the best solutions for all things informal. And today, one of the things that we get to celebrate each month is some of our best leaders. And Pragashini is certainly no short of that. She's somebody that's not only extremely involved in bringing the Ascend organization to more and more organizations to advance the Pan-Asian professional community, but she's also a talent leader that's grown through the ranks at what I would say is a record-breaking pace across financial services, tech, and now at Thomson Reuters. And so we're going to be recognizing and celebrating some of the innovations that she's been able to do and help all of you learn firsthand from the different programs and innovations that she's been able to do. Not only is she the chair of the Inclusion Council with Ascend, but she's been delivering and developing and innovating with her incredible team informal experiences across lines of businesses and across diversity groups like ERGs and BRGs. And she's been able to do that across 23 job groups, 8 BRGs, across a variety of business segments. And of course, she was able to do it before COVID, but when all of us moved to remote, we were able to flip it virtual pretty much overnight, which I know, Pragashini, you and your team did such an incredible job on that. And so through this webinar, we'll chat about a lot of different topics. And so you'll be able to walk away checking off these 6 different learning goals. And then at the end, and probably most importantly, is we're going to save a lot of time for our Q&A. So for everybody that's on here, I want you to start to think about some of those questions that you have. Please do send some of those questions into the Q&A or the chat. I have a live feed coming to my phone here, so I'll be taking a lot of time to look at those questions and serve them up. Questions of all shapes and sizes, please send them through and I'll do my best to get to all of them. But we're going to look at, what is informal. We're going to look at how social impact networks like Ascend can teach us a lot that we can then bring to organizations like Thomson Reuters. We're going to look at things that we've tried, the things that worked, maybe even some of the things that didn't work all that well, and then what's ahead. And then we're going to look at some of the future goals. I think a lot of us are moving into new decentralized hybrid models and really how that impacts how people learn from each other and get access to mentoring and networking and colleague experiences, and then what the role of technology is looking like to support these experiences. So with that, again, please introduce yourself, use the Q&A, and as a reminder, this session is recorded. So if you do have colleagues that couldn't join, we will share a recording with you after this. So before I make the formal introduction, I just wanted to share a bit of a recognition moment. And I mean, I can speak the world of Elizabeth, given the work that she's been able to do across a variety of fronts. But when we were kind of doing our background research on Pragashini, we couldn't help but share one of the recognitions that came from somebody on her team about the type of leader that we get to share this next 45 minutes with. Somebody that's been able to do so much innovation, but also do it with candor, honesty, and authenticity. And so with that, thanks for sharing this kind of background on Pragashini, and let's meet the woman herself who's leading the way at Thomson Reuters. And so without further ado, Pragashini, would love to just have you unmute yourself, say hello, and do a quick introduction.
Great, thanks, Dave. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're coming through.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. For somebody, Dave knows me well. So as you said, that was a lot to hear about myself. So it's actually a good reminder as well in terms of sort of where I should be focusing and what the work that I'm doing. And it's always a good reminder, but thank you. So Pragashini Fox, and I've known Dave, I can't believe, Dave, you said, I think 5 years it goes back, but I still remember our initial coffee chat in the exact room. I remember, so it does take back lots of memories, but I'm excited to be on this journey with you. You and the team have also grown since the first time we've spoken, and it's been super exciting. It's almost like you saw into the future of where we are today in a remote environment, and a lot of the work that the foundations that you put in place did help us sort of accelerate that for our team and the ones that I'm involved in today. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. Currently at Thomson Reuters. Previously, I grew up at RBC, for those of you who would have checked my LinkedIn portfolio. but also happy to share sort of the work at Ascend Canada and go into it. So Dave, happy to jump on. I mean, even maybe share what Ascend Canada is for those who may not know, and sort of some of the work that we kicked off there. So happy to start wherever. All yours for the next 50, 45 minutes.
All right, well, let's jump into it. So first off, I mean, you've accelerated through a variety of roles, overseeing the technology HR at RBC, and then of course over at Thomson Reuters across the global organization. Maybe like, what have been kind of the biggest aha or career milestones that you've had to get to where you are today that kind of brought you through this career journey? Just a bit about you and that career journey you've had.
Yeah, thanks, Dave, for that. So I think my career path, probably like many others, had moments of traditional path, and then at times really lots of mix between sort of, you know, small assignments, experiences that wasn't as linear. And as an individual, I've always been comfortable with just an informal type of character. And so even growing up, and we moved out to different countries every 2 years, change has always been a part of me growing up. So I think that also showed up in my career and the choices that I have made, and sometimes choices that I have made on my own, other times just being at the right place at the right time, and or, you know, as we all know, we're part of organizations that go through change. So I think my career path, there's been a lot of, the theme I would say is taking risks, saying yes to opportunities that I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but then really thriving on the challenge and solving business problems or solving problems. So I think for me, my career started, I actually was studying to be a sports medicine doctor. And so with my parents' sort of desire for their daughters to be engineers and doctors. And then I think as I started that journey, I finished sort of in my schooling there, but then I had an amazing opportunity to be part of an HR organization as an intern, sort of where I really dug my teeth deep into the world of HR and supporting and people and all things talent. So I think key things in my career pathing was sort of, you know, I think it's important that you have a domain and an expertise that people know you for. So I think it's important for me that I built that expertise in my HR professional, whether it was in compensation or in talent acquisition and talent, but also then I wanted to make sure that I wasn't pigeonholed as a comp expert or a talent expert. So I wanted to make sure that there was a generalist component to me. So I think for me, you know, there's been sort of some jump off points where I went from traditional roles, you know, also taking on a few secondments and maternity leaves, which were very eye-opening for me, that you take on assignments for a year, which opens up doors to new leaders, new opportunities. So those were key milestones in my career as well, where I was able to try something different for a year or so. There were times in my career when I had to step back, when I had started having a family. I remember my mentor at the time did share with me that it was probably a career limiting move. We talked through it about that and shared some experiences. But, you know, outside of the theme of taking risks and saying yes, the other key thing as I reflect back is sort of every moment in my career, my milestone, and even today, there were key mentors, sponsors that played a key role. So this is where I'm so hugely passionate about networking, about mentors, and about sponsors, because I do know that, you know, today in this world of sort of many opportunities and many talent, I think there is a clear differentiator when you do have a mentor or a sponsor, somebody who can advocate on your behalf, somebody who gets to know you deeply in the work that you do, how you work. So those are some of the things where I've led in my career and where I am today, leading talent and diversity for Thomson Reuters, and also as the head of HR for product organizations. So really diving deep into sort of helping build products and how they go to market, understanding our customers. So all of it is coming together.
No rest for the wicked with that portfolio. And I think your passion for mentoring and building networks is one of the kind of first projects that we got to team up on with Ascend, knowing that being able to create scalable networks and mentoring is such an important aspect of the Ascend network. So maybe tell us, what is Ascend, and what's the origin story of kind of how you kind of came to think about how we could help and how networking and mentoring could support the Ascend program.
Yeah, so Ascend Canada, for those of you who may not be aware, is a nonprofit organization which was founded in 2012. And this was really founded to enhance sort of the presence, the visibility, awareness, influence of current and future Pan-Asian business leaders. And the objective really and the vision is to develop potential of our members by leveraging networks and providing programs that would sort of, educate, inspire, and help them in their professional organizations within their respective. So I think as I reflect back as a newcomer to Canada, at the time when I came to Canada, I wasn't aware of these programs, or even as I reflect from my parents. But I think having organizations such as Ascend Canada today is so incredibly valuable. And so, it started off mostly as a professional organization for professionals in corporate Canada, but we have also expanded to students, so across many universities across Ontario, and then also chapters across Vancouver and other regions. Ascend Canada, Ascend is also in the US as well, so it's a larger organizations. So I think, the beauty of Ascend is it's made up of many different organizations. There's diverse groups of organizations that are part of Ascend. It's 100% fully run by volunteers. And so the benefit of having networking is so important to Ascend Canada. And this really does provide the opportunities to learn and grow from the multiple platforms that we have across the organization. So with that, Dave, I know when we started chatting, 10,000 Coffees was such a great fit. And I know that it was sort of with a pro bono, but also your sort of passion to support in this mission. So we extended that reach out to 10,000 Coffees precisely to get our professionals from different organizations hosting either one-on-one mentoring sessions or office hours, what we call them, on different topics to make sure that we're learning about either diversity or even a topic on AI or machine learning. So I think building on the network of social learning, network learning, peer-to-peer learning, those were where all the things that came together for us with 10,000 Coffees in Ascend Canada. So it's been hugely successful. As you know, we get great reviews. It really breaks down boundaries across organizations, and the learnings and the exercising of the skills and capabilities across has been phenomenal. So, especially in this today, when we went to virtual, I think that was also seamless because we were still able to continue to have office hours. So if, others who haven't had the opportunity, I'd highly encourage for you to check out Ascend Canada website, join as a member, and once you're a member, you'll get invited to all of these sessions where you're able to learn from many different leaders across the organizations within Canada.
Yeah, and I think I hear, for those that probably don't know, Pragashini's kids are amateur musicians, and some piano, some.
I know. I apologize. I'm gonna.
We celebrate that and support the amateur musician careers on any webinar. We'll have to feature them in the next one. But I think going back
I'm gonna send a text downstairs to make sure that they stop. It's practice hour. That's what's going on.
No, I totally love it. I want to, it's great. But with Ascend, it was an interesting situation because a lot of people that are on here are probably thinking about, building mentoring or building networking programs, especially to advance underrepresented communities. And of course, this month is Pan-Asian Professional Month, and it's a chance for us to advance that community in a time that it's more important than ever with all the things that are happening in the world. But, maybe for everyone that's on the call, talk us through kind of why you looked at mentoring and networking as an important solution for that community, and why you look for technology. What were some of the things that technology was going to hopefully help you solve?
Dave, I think you cut out for me a bit at the end, but can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So I think your question was around sort of why mentoring is important in networking. And then I think I cut out on your last part of the question. There was two parts to that question.
Yeah, really like maybe talk us through why mentoring and networking was important for that community and kind of how you got there. And then the second part is really, what did you look to technology to help you solve with that problem?
Great. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I think, we all, as I look back even at my own professional, right, mentoring was a powerful professional growth tool in my journey, and it still continues to be. So I think tying those two pieces and when with 10,000 Coffee and the mission that 10,000 Coffee brings, it's a platform that enables and actually accelerates and simplifies the whole process of making matches and also making sure that all the logistical pieces are taken care of, which sometimes gets in the way. So while that sounds very tactical, I think it's important. So for Ascend Canada, we used to do speed mentoring, speed networking sessions where we would have in a room invite many leaders and also have members join and sort of rotate through mentoring programs and speed networking sessions to learn and grow. But I think shifting to a technology enabled also allowed us to expand our reach in terms of the number of members that we could reach. So it wasn't just isolated to those in Toronto if we could do it virtually, or for those who could come in person would be in person. So I think it was really important that we had reciprocal learning through breaking through biases, breaking through learning of what is it that we want the non-Pan-Asian leaders to learn, what is it that we want our Pan-Asian leaders to learn, what is it members should learn about, sort of how do you break through some of the biases and the learning barriers that might be to move up into the senior leadership roles within organizations in Canada. So I think those were key components that we wanted to leverage the 10,000 Coffees and the networking sessions, and also bring visibility to a lot of the leaders in the community. So which allowed leaders from different organizations to host these sessions and make these cross-boundary connections across. So I think those are where we were able to do some matches. And this increased engagement, it increased a lot of colleagues sharing about learning different things that they may not have been exposed to before, or things that they may not necessarily get from their own company or their own network. So just expanding those networks and continue to learn and grow.
Yeah, you brought up a really great point where there's probably a lot of people who have been matching on Excel spreadsheets or chasing people down with emails or just really just hoping that people do it and not actually having programs for it. But I think, aside from the benefit of just automation and streamlining and taking away the manual efforts, you brought up a really good point with bias. That's an important one because whenever there's manual efforts, there's bias, just inherent.
Right.
Like, talk me through that. Like how would you kind of coach people on this webinar around how to think about the role of technology to remove bias?
Yeah.
Help us understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll talk about something that we're doing at Thomson Reuters as well, similarly to 10,000 Coffees. So we have 10,000 Coffees within. And then the other component that we've introduced at Thomson Reuters is this notion around internal talent marketplace and gigs, and they're connected. And the reason I bring that up is sort of, where we are able to leverage technology to remove some of these biases in matching is so the employee themselves go and enter, what is it that I want to learn in a mentoring relationship? What is a skill that I want to learn or a leadership capability? And then the mentor themselves can also go in and enter, here are things that I can offer to the relationship, right? So, Pragashini, for example, may say, I'm happy to talk about, business, technology industry or leadership or talent or, customer experience. So I think, as you enter these, the technology then uses the algorithm to make the matches. to find those, which really does help break down hierarchy. I had a story the other day. I was matched through 10,000 coffees for a one-on-one mentoring. And I was excited because this was an individual across the pond, like way in Zug, Switzerland, in our office. I'm in Toronto. I probably would have never met this individual, but we had our portfolios had been matched. And when I did have the coffee chat, he mentioned to me that, oh my gosh, I didn't know you were so senior in the organization when I booked the coffee. And I thought it's so powerful because you never know, there's no titles, there's no hierarchies. It breaks all of that down. It really brought us together. We had such an amazing coffee chat. I learned about his data science experience, what engages him, what excites him. He learned about some of the practices that we had. We even came up with an amazing idea of a fellowship program where he works in our TR labs. And we talked about sort of how do we get people through our TR labs to come in and join as fellows, and then kind of, it's because it's such an attractive area of the organization to join for new grads. And then how do we then flow talent to other parts of the organization? So it's probably a conversation that likely would not have happened if we had used a manual process of matching, right? We're two different people, two different skill sets, but matched together. And similarly, we have these gigs that we have, we're leveraging technology as well, where leaders across the organization are entering short-term assignments. So in addition to my role today, if there's capacity, there are leaders across the organization that are posting opportunities on their team, whether it's a 2-week opportunity or, I'm looking for a skill of this person to help me on this project or a team. And then we have gig seekers, we call them, who also sign up to say, okay, I have these skills that I can bring, but here are the 5 things that I want to also learn. The system does the match again, and they still go through an interview process, but it still does the matches. So I bring that up because that's another form of informal learning where we have these amazing opportunities where it may not exist, outside of formal matches that we've been able to. And the stories that we're starting to hear is, a colleague from India was able to participate in a project in Minneapolis. And so now they've gotten to know new leaders, new teams, they've been exposed to a new project, new business knowledge. And some of them, I've heard a few stories already where some of them are converting to full-time opportunities because now they just got to know somebody who they didn't know before. So I think it's really critical in today's day and age where dynamic resourcing is important, networking is so critical, social peer-to-peer learning is so important, and having these opportunities such as, networking, mentoring through 10,000 coffees, gigs, whatever we can leverage in terms of technology to be able to help with these matches, to kind of continue to, it's breaking barriers, but it's also moving at speed, and also just the sheer cutting through some noise and complexity a bit, right? So otherwise left to a manual Excel spreadsheet, we all know how well those go so well. So it's been an interesting learning and a journey for sure. But yeah. I see the shift happening more towards that.
Yeah, the shift the last point you just made around the shift is a really good segue, because we are now in this, if you're not having a digital first solution, you're just going to kind of get left behind, especially as we're more decentralized. We might not be remote forever, but we'll certainly be decentralized forever, which just creates new complexity and permutations of where people are and how people will learn from each other. And there's a lot of really great wins out of it, but there is a really big shift towards helping everybody get access to connectivity, whether that's, in connectivity we might all think of it as mentoring, but mentoring has so many different delivery models to it.
Right.
Like networking versions of that, like you just described with your colleague from the lab, the data team, where that was just probably a 45-minute virtual conversation, but that person probably walked away and said, I just had the best mentoring experience with this executive. And so that's mentoring. It doesn't have to be just the kind of analog approach. And so that actually kind of leads to a great pull. And we're going to kind of level up our technology game by actually trying to pull on the GoToWebinar around mentoring. And when you think about mentoring, not just, the formal analog, but would love to hear from people, do you have a mentoring mandate in the next, some period, or just no mandate at all? And when you think about mentoring, that might be things like onboarding buddies, high potential mentoring, general networking, but really any type of mentoring, regardless of the shape or size that you see. Do you have a mandate? So we'll let the team on the call just include your answer here. And from there, once you've submitted your poll, feel free to kind of share a bit more about what you're solving for in the Q&A or in the chat, and we can actually jump into that to share a bit more. So I'll wait till I get the live results on my phone from the team, but feel free to share any of the questions or mentoring programs that you have in the chat, and we can reflect more. And I do, Pragashini, I have to share that people do like the music in the background, is what we're hearing. So make sure you pass that feedback on to onto your daughter.
Thank you, and I've asked them to stop, so they have stopped.
Oh no.
I can imagine it is distracting. I think I saw a couple of comments too, but I totally appreciate it. I apologize.
We
have lots of time in the rest of the day to practice.
It's getting positive reviews, so we want to keep it going. To keep
it's an interesting household at lunchtime.
So almost half of the people on here have mandates in the next 1 to 3 months. So just as we thought we'd be taking some holiday, maybe in July or August, we've got some launches that we have to do. What are some of the what's some of the advice that you'd have for everyone that's thinking about how they go live, and maybe some of the technology recommendations that you'd have given some of the launches that we've done?
Yeah, no, I think I remember some of our early conversations, and look, I think it's in an organization, right? I mean, budget, there's always a question around budget. And sometimes with informal learnings and programs, it tends to get less attention. And so there are sometimes you need to get sort of testimonials and, experiences that others have gone through. So that's just something that I think every organization who's planning to build this would need to get through. So, but I have to say, start small. Sometimes, you go with where the energy is. There are, leaders who are really into wanting to make sure this happens. And I think that's where we started in both within Ascend Canada and at Thomson Reuters, is sort of, starting within a small contained group to whether you want to experiment, test, and then you'll see soon sort of word of mouth would spread. I remember, I think 1.5 years ago, Dave, when we implemented this at Thomson Reuters, lots of questions, right? I mean, why can't we just do mentoring, sort of one-to-one where we can just make the matches? And we can do all of that. And I know many of us have these mentoring programs, whether it's in a key talent, high potential talent, programs where we do matches. But again, sometimes all of that takes a lot of planning and a lot of manual work for a 6-month engagement. So let's leave that to Dave and his team, because I have to say, some of the benefits was not only in the system technology, making the matches and setting things up seamlessly, but also the support, Dave, your team provides. And I know you're not paying me to say this, but I think one of the things I found really helpful is the tips and the coaching that I would get in advance of each of those sessions as well. So I would say, start small, experiment, word of mouth will catch on. Our chief people officer, not that she was against it, she was very much on for testing, 10,000 coffees and building this technology enabled mentoring networking opportunity, because we really believe at Thomson Reuters a lot of our learning is coming from social peer-to-peer networking and connections, given that we are in multiple time zones across so many different regions. wanting to break down silos, believe in dynamic resourcing, being able to, the lifespan of a skill is so short. So how do you try to address all of these? So therefore we really believed in the networking and the mentoring that happened through 10,000 Coffees. And our chief people officer does. I remember she asked me, Pragashini, I want to do one a month. And I'm thinking, that's a bit ambitious. But it's been a year, and I believe Mary Alice has done a month, and a lot comes out of it. Both, it's very much a reverse mentoring in many of those situations. But a lot of our leaders, through word of mouth, we are now using it as a case study for our, having uncomfortable conversations around D&I, given the state of our, recent state of our, whether it's racism, whether it's around anti-Asian hate, all of these topics, we're actually having these conversations through, just as much as we're also using it as a use case to talk about our change journey in the organization and our transformation. So, I think you can take this networking on many different fronts, and it's not just isolated to career coaching and mentoring, which sometimes typically that's what people might, just relate it to.
Okay, there's so much to unpack there, and I think we hear this a lot. It's like, what about our executives? Because executives like yourself, like Mary Alice, chief people officer, one of of Thomson Reuters. Executives are so important to get involved in these programs, but if you just turn their profile on Workday and say they're open to mentoring, they're going to get so many requests. It's going to be fully out of control. So maybe just walk us through, what was kind of what's the quote unquote business case for leaders to get involved? And then two is maybe walk us through kind of what that actually looked like.
Yeah, it's such a great question, because this is actually enabling our leaders to do their jobs better and to be held more accountable. So at Thomson Reuters, we are very much, aligned on leaders are held accountable for having a talent mindset, especially in today's environment where talent market is particularly hot. Coming out of the pandemic, we're also, many research indicates that talents are looking for change. So how do we encourage leaders to leverage these opportunities that we have to get to know their talent, to create opportunities, to find opportunities to import, export talent, to make sure that they're building diverse teams, inclusive teams. So really the business imperative here is to say, this is a tool that's available for you to leverage, because you as a, it's almost like when you become a parent, you're signing up as a contract to be able, those kids are yours, piano or no piano. You signed up to sort of parent and bring them up regardless of situation, and leaders are the same. So it is so important that we, when key talent or any talent leave an organization, right? There are many reasons that they say they leave an organization, but the biggest one that we hear is, I didn't know my leader had my career at interest, or I didn't know that, I was valued in the organization. So really our business case to leaders have been to say, sort of leverage these platforms, leverage these technology, make sure that you keep an open mind for these gigs, put out gigs out there where talent might get to know you, find opportunities to create that office hour, talk about a topic that you're passionate about, or as a leader, lean into an uncomfortable conversation and sign up for an office hour. Many times we also hear from our business resource groups, our BRG groups, that when we have roundtables or discussions, it's the same leaders, the same talent that attend these. So, we're really holding our leaders accountable to have that talent mindset, to lean into these, and to leverage the platform which is going to enable them to get to know the talent, for them to be able to export, import talent in and out of it. And we're actually going to hold them accountable through performance management to say, okay, you really can't get more than an achieve rating if we don't see movement in your team, or you're not, getting to know talent outside your organization. So there's no more excuses about, I don't know how to reach out to my colleague in Brazil, or, how do I get to know? So these are really good opportunities for our leaders to sort of leverage and role model, in terms of their model coach care. These are plenty of opportunities for them to leverage. So that's where I would go back to, is sort of leaders being accountable for talent mindset and how these networking platforms enable that.
Yeah, it's such a, so many leaders and managers have these goals around leadership models or mindsets or culture or D&I goals. So the quote unquote what is very defined, but the how is usually a bit of a mystery, where there's not actually a solution for those leaders to then go and have those mentoring experiences or networking
Right.
or those discussions. People are just kind of leaving it to hope or serendipity that will happen. And, of course, what gets measured gets done. And it's typically a black box of mystery where it's like, well, hopefully they're doing it, don't really know where. And again, what gets measured gets done. So of course, whether or not it gets done is really a bit of a mystery.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say for other organizations who are thinking about implementing something like 10,000 coffees or gigs or other things, right? It actually makes the vastness of your organization feel a bit more simpler and manageable, right? So, while you can call it informal, there is some structure around it that actually makes things easier, because in today's day and age, everybody's so busy, right? And even some of our formal learning programs are sort of taking a flavor of informal. So, for example, we just rolled out digital fluency across the organization, and typically that probably would have been a formal in-classroom type learning, but we're actually shifted it to, there's sort of this 20-minute discussion, but then the rest of the learning comes through cohort, we call it conversations. So whether it's leveraging 10,000 coffees or other platforms, it's having conversations around a topic around, what does unlearning mean in the digital mindset? What's the meaning of sort of data? How do you leverage data? So those are, the true learning and application comes in these informal networking sessions where you're talking to 30 others from the organization and how they're applying it in their jobs today, right? So different from where previously you would have gone to a training session in a classroom session, learned it, sort of you come back to your work and you kind of get busy into other things. But, there's really been an opportunity to sort of apply the learning in the moment as well through these informal learning networks. So that's something that we're starting to see a shift in as well, sort of a learner mindset around informal learning.
Yeah, we've heard a lot of that, where if you think, and this kind of goes back to the budget and how you fund these things, but there's a lot of budgets for formal learning or formal training, and it's something that people are really used to buying. The informal is typically just kind of left to serendipity. And so maybe for the group on the call, in lieu of having you as their direct manager to coach them through this, how are people thinking about funding informal and making that business case to be able to, just like you buy training or compliance, how are people funding, or what are the types of budgets, or how's this working as people are starting to prioritize it? What's the business case and funding models looking like?
Yeah, so I think I think it's different for different organizations, I'm sure, but I think you have to start with the business priorities and the business outcome, right? So for us, we're such a customer obsessed culture, and that's everything goes, starts and it's backwards from the customer. And so in order for us to make a business case, it's less about HR. In fact, I think, Dave, I always say, I never wanted to come from an HR, because then it feels like it's a HR process or an HR thing. And I'm always, mindful that it has to be business sponsored or a business initiative. So the business case has to come from, how is this going to drive value for the business? And how does this tie into your priorities? So for us, in terms of Thomson Reuters, one of our top 3 priorities is around building an inclusive culture of world-class talent. So really honing in on that to make sure that, you know, this is going to help that, and especially in an environment where it's no longer role-based. You know, career pathing is shifting so fast. It's no longer a ladder. You know, it is more about experiences. So, you know, when you think about the future of careers, and we want to make sure that we're retaining, when people join Thomson Reuters, we always say we want this to be a milestone in their career. And so how do we differentiate ourselves from that? So, you know, I think every company has to find that for themselves, is sort of what's your business imperative, what's your business case, what's your data telling you in terms of, you know, we needed to break down silos. You know, for too long, it's an amazing company where people are just comfortable within their own respective business lines. You know, we didn't see talent moving across different, you know, within our legal business, or tax business, or even within functions. So I would go back to say, look, finance is going to ask for a business case. You got to put your investment case in. But I would tie it back to, you know, it's less about, you know, connections, but it's really about looking at the future of learning, the future of growth, and tying it back to that and your business. And that's where we've been able to have some success, is sort of, again, like I said, we had to start small, right? So you get some wins, you have some examples to share, some sort of stories that you share. And once the stories start to come, you know, I think those are powerful to share broadly as well. And then, you know, it just kind of picks up. So it's that network effect of, you know, start small, and then sort of it really does pick up quickly.
Yeah, and it's your point around, it's not just like connections. Like, of course, connections are really important, but it's actually development and advancement. And a kind of major win from you and your team is that, as rated by your end employees, by actual colleagues at Thomson Reuters, your matches to have those types of learning experiences are now rated at over 95%. Meaning over 95% of all those matches are actually being rated by the busiest sales professionals, technologists, and the people that are using this program as a high value experience for their development. And that's just a conversation, and the structure of it is structured, to your point. Informal and structure are not mutually exclusive. They actually should happen together. Informal does need structure. People are not naturally really great at learning from each other. So our program is all the nudges, the conversation guides to guide those things. But I mean, a big shout out to Elizabeth and the people on your team.
Huge.
To build a 95% quality score with such a busy global audience.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, as I'm speaking, there's a whole team, small and mighty for sure, that have worked through this. But I think sometimes it's also helpful if you find those leaders in the organization that lean into these, right? And have them advocate on your behalf, versus sometimes it's less about, you know, head of talent trying to push something, but, you know, for it to come from the business. And I do think it's the future of sort of career development and growth, where, you know, we're learning more about sort of the learnings that are coming through connections are way more powerful. And also, like I said, you know, when we all reflect back on our careers, it's, you know, it's much as about what we bring to the role, but it's also sometimes who's advocating on our behalf or who's sort of seen us. And so these touch points and opportunities allow those things to happen. So I don't think you can underestimate these powerful connections that are made, but it's broader. I think for us, learning is happening in this format for us from now on.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and so
another example I have in that, right? It's sort of when you have these networking sessions, you know, we want to make sure that our product leaders and our product engineering leaders just know just as much about our go-to-market and segments, sales, right? So it's really about bringing, sometimes purposefully, those communities together to share and learn and grow through those. So, you know, it's really something that we're starting to see, is sort of making these connections across some of the lines.
That's amazing. I can't wait to see, part of the matching algorithm is you can actually design those collisions to get those practice areas to have those conversations. And so we'll definitely, I'm excited for that as being one of the key next steps. And so what else is, and we're almost at time, believe it or not, but kind of in thinking forward in 12 months from now, what's next on this front? Did I lose you on mute?
For you.
There we go.
Oh.
I don't know if I lost you, but where the question I had was just knowing that connections are key to learning and how we can all relate to how mentors drive our careers, as you just shared. What's next for you over the next 12 months?
Yeah, I think, as we look ahead, it's really staying close to the talent marketplace in terms of getting ahead of, we're starting to find that dynamic resourcing is becoming more prominent in our organization. And I think it's probably common across some of the other organizations where, it's less about role-based moves, but it's really about where the priorities are and where we need to shift our talent and our skills. And upskilling is becoming another key component, right? So as roles are getting disrupted, whether it's through automation or just in other business strategies of where we are finding the talent, we've been focused on upskilling and reskilling. So the difference is, right, so upskilling to make sure that we are focused on digital fluency, to make sure that all of our colleagues across the organization are coming on this digital transformation that we're on, but also in reskilling. So when we look at reskilling, upskilling, and the focus around careers, it's doubling down on sort of how do we continue to look ahead in terms of our informal learning opportunities to make sure that we are keeping our colleagues engaged, motivated, growing, and that we can retain them in our organization so they feel like they can come to Thomson Reuters and learn and grow and have an amazing career here. So those are some of the things that we're focused on for the next 12 months.
It's an exciting time to be in a business that has so much technology and digital innovation happening with everything else that's going on as well. And so just as we think of next steps, I think one of the, and we'll share all this recording with everybody else, but first off, a really big thank you for joining us and letting me rapid fire all my questions and taking some from the audience. Congratulations on what you've brought to Ascend. I know thousands of Pan-Asian professionals as well as allies are actively building networks and mentoring experiences because you worked with their team to bring technology in and kind of throw away the Excel spreadsheets. So congratulations on all of that. And it's, again, in May and also in every day, we should be celebrating our Pan-Asian colleagues, and we certainly are able to do that with the Ascend community. And then congratulations on everything that's happened with Thomson Reuters to you and the team, seeing the 95% match quality score, seeing how this is bringing people together from all over the world to share ideas across businesses, to create mentoring experiences with people like yourself, the chief people officer. It's just an example of how you can get really smart with how informal can actually be structured and scaled and curated so that informal is not being left to just hope or serendipity. We can actually create systems for informal to make it happen in the right ways. Mm-hmm. With that, so congratulations on all of that. And I always love to, back in the day when we had breakfast together and now our virtual coffee catch up. Congratulations on all of that.
Thank you, Dave, and thanks for yours and the team. And I mean, I think there's a whole team around Ascend. Like I said, it's 100% volunteer run. So, everybody's totally engaged and super pumped up around this, and also at Thomson Reuters. So I appreciate all the accolades, but I will certainly take it back to the teams who've been hard at work on this and share the feedback.
No, absolutely. And summing through our social impact programs like Ascend, 10,000 Coffees, our engineering teams and product teams and everybody that's at our organization lives and breathes, what's the most important way to help create informal experiences. And the world's changed a lot in the last year. And what we've really seen is that people learn best from each other. And we've heard about reskill and upskill, onboarding buddy programs, and even informal or formal mentoring programs. And something that we're really excited to launch is our new development programs module, which allows organizations to match people together, whether it's for coaching or confidant opportunities. It actually only takes 3 hours to set up a program and deploy on scale. So to match, a reskill upskill program where maybe you have 100 digital experts, to match them with 100 people who want to become digital experts, for them to have 3 to 6 coffee chats to explore and learn from each other. We can set up those programs in about 3 to 5 hours. And we've also launched a ton of programming around that our clients can leverage around inclusion concepts like psychological safety. So I want to make sure that everybody on here can take advantage of those and reach out if there's a way for us to help kind of set up and scale some of your informal programs. And I think we have one final poll on that front, just to see if there are people on the call that are interested to get some of these best practices. Let us know. I know there's a 1 to 3 month timeline for about half of you. So we can just switch over to the poll and just see which participants would like to get those best practices so that our team can flip over an email after. So with that, I think we'll give everybody 2 minutes back in their calendar, but look out for next steps and a survey. And Pragashini, it's so great to have you as part of our featured leader for May to celebrate everything at Ascend and Thomson Reuters, and looking forward to all the exciting work that lies ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks to all those who came. And so I look forward to learning from others as well. So please link me in. Love to learn your journeys and your stories. I'm always learning, and we all have lots to share. So thanks again for the opportunity, Dave, and thanks for all the support.
Yes, have a great Memorial Day for anyone taking that off, but otherwise have a great rest of the week.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.